Hello Mila, hello Jack, hello everybody else who's watching. Welcome to Storytime with Grandad. Today's book is from the Lighthouse Keeper, and it is The Lighthouse Keeper's Rescue. Once upon a time, there was a lighthouse keeper called Mr. Grinling. He lived with Mrs. Grinling and their cat Hamish in a little white cottage on the cliffs. Mr. Grinling loved his job. He sang as he polished the light. He whistled as he cleaned the windows. But he was especially happy when visitors came. "I'm a lighthouse keeper from my head to my heels," he would tell them cheerfully. "Always have been, always will be." He was also a lighthouse keeper who was getting old. Sometimes he could hear his bones creaking as he climbed the lighthouse stairs. One day Mrs. Grinling found him by the shed, dozing with his head under a heliotrope. She woke him gently. "What's the matter, Mr. G?" she asked anxiously. "Are you ill?" "No, Mrs. G," said Mr. Grinling politely. "I'm just having a little snooze in the sun." But all was not well. One afternoon Mr. Grinling and Hamish rowed out to the lighthouse to prepare the night light. Mr. Grinling was tired after rowing, so he decided to have a nap. When he awoke, it was dark. "Oh, those poor boats!" he exclaimed as he rushed into the lighthouse. "I do hope there hasn't been an accident." And he peered anxiously into the darkness. There hadn't been an accident, but someone had noticed that the light had not come on. A few days later, Mr. Grinling received a letter from the Inspector of Lighthouses. For a while, Mr. Grinling made sure he didn't fall asleep anywhere except in his bed. He was careful not to doze by the shed, and he certainly didn't rest his head underneath the heliotrope flowers. One sunny afternoon, as he was on his way to the lighthouse, Mr. Grinling stopped to watch the 3 squabbling seagulls. The dinghy rocked gently up and down. Mr. Grinling closed his eyes, leant back, and soon fell fast asleep. The dinghy dipped gently in and out of the waves until it was far beyond the lighthouse. When the light didn't come on, Mrs. Grinling began to worry. She rang the Coast Guard. "Don't fret, love," he said. "I'll send the launch out straight away. We'll soon find him. He's probably gone to sleep again." But Mr. Grinling found the Coast Guard first. The crunching noise as the dinghy hit the launch woke him. For a moment he was very frightened. The Coast Guard shouted to him, "At last, hold tight and we'll tow you to the lighthouse. With luck, you might get the light on before anybody notices." But Mr. Grinling was not lucky. The next day, 3 inspectors of lighthouses arrived at the little white cottage. They wore grey suits and long faces. "We are extremely cross, Mr. Grinling," they said. "You cannot keep falling asleep. It isn't right for a lighthouse keeper. We must take further action. You have always been a good and conscientious lighthouse keeper, but now you need to rest. We have given your job to a younger man. Goodbye, Mr. Grinling." They shook his hand and took the lighthouse key and left. Mr. Grinling was so upset that he went straight to bed. Nothing that Mrs. Grinling did would comfort him. She cooked his favourite breakfast and his favourite dinner. She sang him Humpty Dumpty, his favourite song, but Mr. Grinling didn't stir. He just lay there staring at the ceiling. After a week, Mrs. Grinling decided that she'd had enough. "Mr. G," she said sternly, "I've had enough. You can't lie in bed forever. I need you to help me pack. Now stop this nonsense at once." So Mr. Grinling climbed out of the bed, and together he and Mrs. Grinling packed their trunk. From time to time a tear would roll down Mr. Grinling's cheek. "Whatever shall I do, Mrs. G?" he asked sadly. "I'm a lighthouse keeper. I don't know how to do anything else." They were very tired when they finished packing, but Mrs. Grinling said she wanted a last look through the telescope. "Whatever's that?" she exclaimed. "There's an enormous black shape on the beach. Mr. G, we must find out what it is." Together they ran down the steep, winding path to the beach below. And then they stopped. There it lay on the sand, a great, black, shiny whale. "Jiminy cricket!" exclaimed Mr. Grinling. "It's a whale! He must have got lost. We can't leave him here, Mrs. G. If he stays out of the water, he will die." "We won't let him die," said Mrs. Grinling firmly. "I'll just consult my book." And she did. "We need to help to push him, Mr. G," she decided. "You must ride to the village and bring back as many people as you can find. At 3 o'clock it will be high tide. We might be able to float him then. While you're away, I shall throw water over him to keep him cool, and I shall talk to him so he doesn't feel lonely." Away went Mr. Grinling as fast as his little legs could pedal. All the villagers came: the butcher, the baker, the electrician, the school children and their teachers, the grannies and the granddads. Some of them ran out of breath and were left behind. "Hurry!" shouted Mrs. Grinling as she saw them coming. "The water's right in now, and it's time to push." Everybody gathered round the whale. "Ready, steady, push!" called Mr. Grinling. They pushed and shoved and huffed and puffed until everybody was purple in the face. But the whale was moving. Slowly the water crept up his big shiny sides until he was floating. Everybody stopped pushing and watched. The whale looked at them, then with a flick of his enormous black tail, he turned and headed out to sea. "Goodbye," called the villagers. "Good luck." That evening, the villagers and the Grinlings watched the whale rescue on the television news. "It will soon be time for us to say goodbye," said Mrs. Grinling. "Tomorrow we have to leave the little white cottage on the cliff. But before we go, we'll have a farewell picnic. We would like you all to come." Everybody came: the butcher, the baker and the electrician, and the children on their bikes, and the babies in their pushchairs. It was a very merry affair. Then 3 guests turned up who had not been invited. "We saw you on the television news," explained the first inspector. "Yes," said the second inspector. "We were so proud of you and Mrs. Grinling." "We want you to be the lighthouse keeper again," said the third inspector. "But we will give you an assistant. You will work Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, and he'll do the rest of the week." Mr. and Mrs. Grinling were so delighted that they jumped and up and down for joy. "3 cheers for the inspectors of lighthouses," shouted the villagers, "and 3 cheers for the Grinlings." The end. Goodbye, Mila. Goodbye, Jack. I'll see you soon. Goodbye, everybody. Bye.